Okay, Glass, so what we're going to do here is actually make a global density adjustment and just see what happens to this particular image. So what we're going to do is we're going to add a curve adjustment layer, and I'm going to have to bring my info panel back. Oh, there it is. So from the last video, what we did is we went through the info panel itself, and I added 3 sample points that correspond with these particular points here. So we have one on the black, which is pure black, 000, one on the middle value, which is 127 RGB, and then one on the white, which is 255. What I'm going to do is add a curve adjustment layer, and this is how I'm going to adjust my density. I'm going to basically increase the collection of light, and all what you can imagine is, as I'm doing this, the program is basically placing lighter value on top of the given image. And the more density I add, the more light the image will technically have, and the lighter will appear, the brighter it will appear. So I'm going to go ahead and bring that open. And I do apologize, the histogram is really funny in this particular image because it doesn't have a very even distribution of tones, because it's purely only a set variation of tones. The histogram does look very weird. So there you go. That just is what that is. Anyhow, so what I'm going to do is just slide the info panel over, and I'm going to basically grab a middle value, basically from the middle, I apologize, on the curve. I'm going to start by increasing the density. So I'm going to basically push my curve up, and that's going to lighten up the image, increasing the collection of light, increasing the density. Now, as I do this, keep an eye on my middle value. Ultimately, I am just adjusting the middle value. Let's see what happens. As I go up, the middle value goes up. I'm just going to push it to 200 RGB just for the sake of it. Or we'll just go with 202. Actually, you know what? No. I said 200. There we go. Now, the oops, the RGB value readout on the info panel has changed a little bit. There's a number on the left and a number on the right. The number on the left is ultimately what the original value was. Now it does this because we're working with a curves, or basically just an adjustment layer. Because I'm working with an adjustment layer, it's able to read the original value, and then the value the adjustment layer creates while it's open. If I click on anywhere else, that value goes away. If I click back on the adjustment layer, it comes back. So it's just telling me that for point number 2, which is here, it originally was 127, middle value, and then it is ultimately now 200. And that is a great thing to see, a very useful readout, so I know where I was and where I've come. So I've added more light in this case, and I've increased that value, so that has become a lot brighter. Now I'll notice that the black hasn't really changed, number 1, and the um, white hasn't really changed, number 3. We'll also notice up here that this particular live readout will also have the same thing. So the original value on the left, a forward slash, and the new value. So if I start moving around, so if I go one past middle value, I'll see that looking up here, it was 151, it's now 220. And 177 went to 235, 203 went to 245, 229 went to 251. So by increasing the density, I've increased the density on not just the middle value, but over here. Moving forward, if I go back the opposite way, towards black, same idea. All these have been increased, except for black and except for white. The reason for black and white staying the same is because they're so extreme that curve adjustment layer isn't really doing much. Because the toe of the curve is more or less in the same place, as well as the shoulder, these values don't change. If I were to adjust the toe, if I were to bring the toe in, let's watch what happens with the number 1. Or up rather, not in. We'll see that it starts to increase its density. And if I do the same thing for the white, we'll see it starts to, in this case, decrease its density, get lower. Now, this is a very bizarre looking curve, and you would typically never ever do this in an actual image, but I'm just doing this to illustrate what happens. So let's actually just reset this curve now, and completely reset. Now, that was increasing density. If I want to decrease density, it's pretty much the same idea, just in the opposite way. So I'm going to grab the middle value again, and I'm going to lower my curve, and this is going to decrease the density of my image. I'm actually removing light in this case. And so what I get is from 127 now down to 87. Same deal if I start looking at the other swatches in this case. I go from 151 to 113, 177 to 145, and so on and so forth. So that's what happens when you decrease the density. Now, if you start doing extreme adjustments, what you'll notice is that these tones almost become the same. I'm darkening the image to the point that most of it is going to be pure black if I'm lowering density. If I'm increasing density too much, it'll be the opposite. I'm increasing the density so that most of the image becomes pure white. So that's just going extreme. Now I have talked about why you never want to flatline curves, and this is ultimately why. If you flatline a curve like this, the adjustment is too extreme and you're going to start removing detail. Ultimately, this information, if it was in a photographic image, would become blown out or clipped. It's not that useful to us. So there you go, guys. That is increasing and decreasing density. Now, in the next videos, we're going to look at this in a more practical way in an actual photographic image.